All right, now we're looking at Gatsby Chapter 4. So, with 4, we get even more of these rumors. At the beginning, we get the fact that someone calls him a bootlegger. It says one time he killed a man who had found out that he was nephew to von Hindenburg and second cousin to the devil. The devil. But anyway, uh, so with that, of course, we get even more rumors. He's uh, nephew to the Kaiser, nephew to von Hindenburg, and second cousin to the devil. He's a bootlegger. He's killed a man. He's a German spy. He's an American soldier. We got all sorts of fun rumors about this guy. And again, it's because nobody knows who he is because he's a weirdly private person for someone who has giant parties that go throughout his whole house. So that's one of those things that's really interesting to look at. From there, we get all the people that are there. That's actually a pretty darn boring part of the story, so if you pretty much skipped over that, you should be all good. The only character I think is worth bringing up in that is Clipspringer, who comes up in, I believe, Chapter 5 again, and also really late in the book. He is someone who is there so often and so long that he becomes known as the Boarder. Boarder as in someone who boards there, who lives there, basically. Clipspringer basically just lives in Gatsby's house, and uh, they make a much bigger deal of this in the movie, but he is said later on to be like some distant relative to Beethoven and thought to have some of his musical talent. They make a slight deal about that in the book, but in the movie they really play that up a lot. But then from there we get Gatsby shows up and wants to have lunch with Nick, and as they're starting to go into town, um, of course we get all the old sports references in there, but we have the line there that I talked to him perhaps 6 times in the past month and found to my disappointment he had little to say. Again, Gatsby's this very private guy. He plays everything very close to the chest. He's not going to put himself out there until he knows the situation is in his favor. And that's all you really need to know about him so far. But of course, you've read ahead, so you know more than that, hopefully. But then we get just this weirdly confrontational thing. Look here, old sport, he broke out surprisingly. What's your opinion of me, anyhow? This would be like the equivalent. For instance, in my neighborhood, I just had one of my next door neighbors moved, and just within like the last 6 weeks, I've got a new neighbor now. I've talked to them literally twice. I'll probably talk to them a few more times during this, coronacation, whatever we want to call it. But like once this is over, like if I've talked to them 5 or 6 times, if I went over there and just said, "Hey, what's your opinion of me?" That'd be weirdly confrontational and just strange and probably pretty off-putting. And that's what Gatsby does here. But of course, he's this fabulously wealthy guy that has the power of that, so it's something that maybe he can get away with. He gets all these other references in, son of some wealthy people in the Middle West. That of course comes up weird because when he asked Middle West, he says San Francisco, which is interesting. I guess that's all the way west and kind of in the middle, north south, but really, I mean, not what we think of when we think the Midwest, at least. He brings up the Oxford thing, and again, Jordan has brought this up earlier. Now, Nick is kind of feeling that maybe it's not true because it says he hurried the phrase educated at Oxford. And then as they keep going, he keeps telling the story about being a jewel collector, wanting to die because he's so sad, and joining the war thinking that he'll die in the war and it'll be, a glorious death and he won't have to suffer through this life anymore. And he, is such a great soldier. He leads this group of soldiers ahead. They get way ahead of all the other people, and everyone else catches up. They find that this Gatsby and his little group of soldiers basically gunned down 3 whole units of German soldiers, which probably allowed the other troops to catch up. And because of that, he was promoted to a major, and he was given all these awards, even one from Little Montenegro. And he actually gets out he's got it in his pocket. He gets it out and says, "Here it is. Look at it. It's my medal from Montenegro," which is weird. Like, if I wanted to tell you some weird story of my life and I'm just constantly carrying around like evidence of that, it's weird. And he does the same thing with the fact that he also carries around this picture of himself at Oxford. So again, this all just comes around kind of strange. And then he won't even like say why he's really like taking Nick out to lunch. There's clearly a purpose to it that Gatsby wants to ask a favor, but he doesn't want to ask the favor himself. He just wants to talk briefly to him, introduce the idea that Jordan is going to ask the favor on his behalf, it's all just very weird, and Nick doesn't like any of this. He's he's just kind of confused by it all. Uh, so yeah. Then we get some of the next stuff, which kind of maybe ties into Gatsby's past. We've got that he's speeding or doing something wrong, and a policeman comes up beside them. He basically, I'm going to use my book here. He basically holds up a sheet of paper, a white sheet of paper, or a white card, and the guy's like, "Oh yeah, my bad. I'm sorry, Mr. Gatsby." And he gets to just keep driving the way he's driving, and the policeman leaves him alone. And he says he was able to do the commissioner a favor once, so he has the police commissioner, basically giving him some type of card that is sort of a get out of jail free card for at least anything minor. Then we get Wolfsheim. Wolfsheim is this is one of those spots that, again, these old books can sometimes be pretty awful in the way that they depict people. Um, Maybe this guy is just the stereotype of every sort of Jewish New York gangster type person that was from this time period. And maybe Wolfsheim really does fit that, but everything from a small, flat-nosed Jew raising his large head regarded me, like everything about that look is very stereotypical. It's almost the type of stuff that you'd see out of the propaganda stuff from the Nazis, only about a decade later. And of course, he also brings up the whole idea of, he says, "I understand you're looking for a business connection," and he even says this with the G's instead of the C's. And Gatsby's like, "Oh no, no, not this guy. This is someone different." Let's see who's talking to me right now. One of you's talking to me right now. But anyway, so with this, we get this stuff with Wolfsheim, and it's kind of strange. Wolfsheim has literally cufflinks that have human teeth, which is very morbid. And we find out later he's the man who fixed the World Series in 1919. I'm going to give you the quick, 1 minute version of this if you don't know what it is. But 1919, the White Sox were by far the most dominant team in baseball. They went to the World Series to play the Cincinnati Reds. They were basically, they were huge favorites, prohibitive favorites to win it. Nobody expected the Reds to have a chance. But Comiskey, the guy that owned them, was incredibly cheap and didn't pay his players very well, and they got upset with this, and they went to try to negotiate new deals, and he said, "No, you're under contract. You're going to play for what you're supposed to be paid." And ultimately, those players got hooked by some gamblers, some gangsters, basically people in organized labor, not organized labor. Sometimes people say that there's a connection between organized labor and the mob, but I was going to say organized crime. Sorry to any labor unions out there. Wasn't trying to say anything bad about you. But organized crime, and basically they got kind of tied into this stuff, and they threw the World Series so that the Cincinnati Reds won, which means that all those gamblers put a ton of money on the Reds. They were getting good odds for it because nobody expected them to win, and they made a ton of money. All those players were thrown out of baseball. So the players got in trouble. Some of the lower level gamblers got in trouble, but the people at the top were never caught. And according to this, it's Meyer Wolfsheim. Now, there's a real person that's, I think his name was Goldstein. But there was someone who, is thought to be the main person who was in charge of this stuff that made all this money. But yeah, that's the minute and a half version, as it turns out. But then, of course, they run into Tom Buchanan. Tom Buchanan's, he tries to introduce Gatsby and Buchanan, but Gatsby disappears. So again, we're getting some more shady stuff with Gatsby. The long and the short of it is ultimately, if you can kind of skip ahead about 20 seconds here if you don't want the spoiler of his job from now. But the long and the short of it is that he is in fact a bootlegger. He's basically making all his money through selling alcohol, and that's how he's able to build up this empire. And he's done this with Wolfsheim's help. So, and as Wolfsheim's the brains behind it, and Gatsby's kind of the public face. So that's about my 20 seconds as of now. So now back to being safe. And that takes us to one last thing, which is our flashback. The flashback gives us the context of what it is Gatsby actually wants. What Gatsby wants is Daisy. They fell in love a long time ago. Jordan tells the story to Nick, and they fell in love a long time ago. Daisy kept wanting to run off to meet Gatsby at every opportunity, and her family always stopped her because Gatsby at this point was not the man that he is now. And I'll leave it at that to let you get the rest of the details on your own. But he's not the man he was now, and ultimately, the family pushes her into this marriage with Tom Buchanan, and Gatsby's done all of this. He throws parties, he's made all this money, he's bought a house across the bay from the Buchanans. He's done all of this to try to win her heart. There's a really good meme. Let me see if I can actually find it real quick. And basically the idea is... There we go. I'm going to get rid of this, and let's turn this one back on. Let's just open this in a new tab, and I'm going to get myself out of the way here, so let's make me little. Oops, wrong one. Shrink myself down over to the corner. And this is that meme that I love looking at with this. Seeing your crush's green dot on Facebook is the modern equivalent of the green light in Great Gatsby. He looks across the bay, and he's looking across at the green light on the end of Daisy's Pier, and that is where Daisy lives. And I know many of you at this point don't use Facebook, or some of you do, I know, but many of you probably don't, because it's not the, it's now kind of the old person social media. But if you go to it, basically, if you go on the messenger port of it, there's little green dots for if a person is online. So it's like that moment that you were crushing on this person, you want to talk to them, the green light is there, they're there, you could talk to them right now, but can you? And that's exactly kind of the same thing that Gatsby's getting at. So he does all of this just to try to win the heart of this woman that he fell in love with all these years ago. So that's the last thing for chapter 4. That sets us up. Next week we'll be doing the next 2 chapters. At least that's the current plan. After that, one more week we'll probably finish the book and do 3 chapters in a week. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at for now. So see you later. Do your Friday Fun Day posts.